Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni mole wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very, very honored that you are joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids, teachers, principals, and librarians. And please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Anita Saxena. She is here to celebrate the price of ice. Before we invite Anita into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Ken, the powerful and thought-provoking picture book by Carolyn Nunez Vasquez. In Ken, we meet Grace, who loves listening to her grandmother's stories. Her grandmother's stories are filled with wisdom, and through those stories, Grace learns the lessons of nature and of the heart. And she learns that the greatest lesson of all is that we are all kin. Most of all, Grace's grandmother teaches Grace that goodness and love can heal. Helping ourselves to see all people and living creatures as kin will help us heal our societies. This is a really beautiful picture book, a story that you and your kids will love to read over and over again and talk about over and over again. Get your copy today, Ken, by Carolyn Nunez Vasquez. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Ancient Eats, an edible exploration of the world. Written by Stephanie Hansen and brought to you by our friends at History Unboxed. Go on a mouth-watering journey through the ancient world with this family-friendly cookbook. Each of the more than 100 recipes is inspired by delicious historical dishes and adapted for ease of preparation in the modern kitchen. Taste your way through 18 cultures as you feed your mind with mythical origins and the historical significance of food from around the world and from across tens of thousands of years. These recipes are designed with families in mind. So many offer gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian options. Each recipe has a recommended skill level for younger chefs. It's a perfect book if you want to cook with your kids. Get your copy today. Ancient Eats, an edible exploration of the world by Stephanie Hansen and brought to you by our friends at History Unboxed. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Alabama. Our guest is returning to celebrate her brand new young adult contemporary romance. I probably should have had my beautiful wife interview our guest. The name of the book is The Price of Ice. Please welcome back to the show, Anita Saxena. Hey, Anita, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you on. Like I alluded to, romance novels aren't my thing. I know there's usually a picture of Fabio on the cover or somebody like Fabio. But I have a feeling that your book is going to have maybe a little bit more meat in it and meaning to it than a lot of romance novels that we see on the shelves.
Yes, for sure. It's romance in the young adult category. I think there's so many different versions of it, but really I think it's a family story. Mm-hmm. And there just happens to also be a boy in it.
It's a family story with a boy, but I mean that's life. That's what we're talking about, real life.
Yeah.
And it's important. My amazing daughter has had her fiance in her life since she was in 4th grade, and I got to meet him when he was in 8th grade, and they didn't officially start dating until they were both just about out of college. But there are significant people in our kids' lives, and it's much better if they're a part of the family life. than if they're a secret.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
So tell us about the price of ice.
Sure. It's about a 17-year-old competitive figure skater named Kate Reddy, and she's put everything on the line to become a national champion at the junior level. So junior is the level right under senior, which is what you see on TV and at the Olympics. So she has the goal to be an Olympian, and she's very driven and she's very focused. But I think the pursuit of this goal has detracted from the relationship between her and her dad, between her and her mom and her best friend. And so the book is about, it takes place in a small southern town called Huntsville, Alabama. And her parents are divorced. So it's a divorce story where she has become estranged from her father because he's moved far away after the divorce. And her dad won't pay for skating, and her mom doesn't understand why she won't do normal teen stuff. And her best friend is more interested in going to parties than cheering for her at competitions. But Kate's like, that's fine. I have my 2-year Olympic plan, and I am on the road to reach my goal. Except something happens along the way. She meets this boy named Brice. He's a hockey player. He shows up at the practices to practice. He messes up the ice. Kate finds herself injured, and her dreams are now very precarious. She doesn't really know if she'll be able to skate the way that she used to before. And she's found that she's more alone than she's ever been. So yeah, it's a story of healing, about healing relationships physically, loss of identity for athletes when they get injured, and trying to find who you are again. So there's a lot of different fun themes in the book.
Yeah. I think that this is fascinating. You have a background in competitive figure skating, and so you've lived a lot of this. I know a lot of folks, we watch these gymnasts, these figure skaters, these amazing athletes on TV. And a lot of us, like me, I played on a fairly competitive soccer team in high school and college, but I was never at that level, that upper, close to Olympian level or professional level. We all see these athletes, but I don't think we have any idea of the lives that these young people are choosing to live, and the sacrifices that they have to make, and the fact that their lives are very different than the lives we grew up with or the lives that our kids are going to experience.
Yeah, it is very different. And, one theme I tried to have even in my middle grade novel, Double Axel or Nothing, is this whole idea of having balance in your life, right? Between your family and your pursuits and your academics. Like, you have to have balance just to feel healthy mentally. And so things are definitely out of balance in Kate's life in this story.
Yeah. And the other thing that you mentioned here is the injury. A lot of people, again, have no idea how precarious an athlete's career can be, or a gymnast or an acrobat. They're doing these amazing things with their body, pushing their bodies to the limit. And as you said, there's no balance in a lot of these kids' lives, and their time in the ice, their image of themselves as a figure skater, that's all it is. Mm-hmm. And one errant twist of a knee or an ankle can ruin that.
Mm-hmm. When this was about 12 years ago, so I'm in my 30s, and I'm an optometrist, I'm writing, I'm a coach. I have a lot of different hats that I wear. And there was just this errant rut in the ice. The ice was kind of bad, but the Zamboni was about to come out. And I was like, you know what? I want to get this one jump in before the Zamboni comes out, because I was going to go to a competition in a few weeks, and I just wanted to get that one in. Well, my blade got stuck in a rut, and I fell in a really odd way, and my leg splayed out in a very odd way, and I ended up tearing my ACL. So you would think that as an adult, on a psychological level, I would have handled it well, in that, you have surgery, go to PT, things will get better. But the hardest part of it was since I was 11 years old until I was 30, I had literally been to the ice skating rink every morning, unless if I was sick or on vacation or something. That's just what I did. And I saw my friends, or I coached, or, I performed. And I struggled so much with this loss of like identity, even though I was an adult and I had, other hats in my life. It was just like, who am I if I'm not skating, if I don't do that same routine that I've been doing for like past 20 years. And so I can only imagine, when you have a teenager and it happens to them and they don't have that perspective that you have as an adult. So even though I knew it was happening, you still couldn't help feeling the way you felt, if that makes sense. Whereas like, I don't think a 13-year-old would have that same insight when it happened to them. And it was really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, having seen young women, my daughter danced and had danced with a lot of really amazing artists, and some of them have experienced career-ending injuries, and that's hard to imagine that, 13, 15 years old and your career is over. And that's really hard to, even just now saying those words, it's like, that's tough. That's hard. Again, it's really hard to imagine. Hard for, that a 13-year-old's dreams have ended, and how do we support that child, and how do we help that child find a new dream?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I'm imagining that this story would be a great way to talk to our kids just about that. Talk to, because more than likely our kids aren't going to be competitive skaters. They don't have a 2-year Olympic plan, but they have some goals, or maybe they don't have goals. And maybe one of the things we want them to do is to start getting some goals. I think that a lot of those conversations could flow naturally from co-reading this book together.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things in the story is the dysfunctionality of communication between the main character, Kate, and her parents. And, I even found in my own life, sometimes we get so busy and we're just go, go, go. And we don't take that time anymore to just sit down with that family member or friend and just have an honest conversation about where you feel, how you feel, or how the other person's doing, and, sharing your dreams with others, sharing your goals with others. And so that's what's kind of happened in Kate's life, is just that communication between her parents. Assumptions are made and just everybody's busy doing their own thing. So it's really nice to kind of see that arc and character growth between all three of those characters, and just, that take home message of just having that open communication with your family.
So very important. And maybe this is a book that could kind of give a kid an opportunity to say, I'm not crazy about the way we communicate. Maybe we could work on this.
Yeah. And, it's even harder to, the main character, her parents are divorced. So that makes it even harder. And one parent is many, many, many states away. And so then that adds another barrier to communication. And so I hope a lot of children and teenagers could relate, to that situation who are in divorced families.
Yeah. That's thankfully my beautiful wife and I have celebrated 32 years of marriage, and I could never imagine myself, if something happened and we split when my kids were younger, I could never imagine having to, picking up and moving to a place where I wouldn't be able to see my kids easily on a regular basis. That doesn't compute for me.
Yeah, it's hard for sure.
Yeah. So as somebody who tore your ACL, and I'm not sure if you're able to get back and do skating nowadays, ACLs are tough to come back from. Is this filling a part of your life that you miss from being on the ice as much as you were as a youth?
So, after I tore my ACL in 2010, it took me about 2 years to get back to where I was before. So I just had to relearn everything. And I've actually had a lot of success competitively since that injury, but totally different perspective. my knee can only tolerate so much, so I'm just grateful to be out there on the ice and do what I can do. And if I can't do something, it's okay. I'm just happy to be able to be out there. But I do think it, had that not happened, I think I was so stuck in just that competitive go, go, go mindset. And it was a great way for me to just kind of pause and take a breath and like really reassess my life. And I did a lot of personal growth during that time. So, they say everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's really great. Hey, I want to ask you something. It's, and I don't mean to blindside you, but it just occurred to me. One of the things that we've heard, I think since the last time we spoke, was the kind of scandal that broke from the women's gymnastics world, where there was a doctor who was abusing these women for years. Can you kind of give us an insight as to how these young women who are so successful and so great at what they're doing and seem so confident to become victimized in this way? One part of me says, oh, they're brave enough and they're strong enough to go out there and compete in front of thousands. You would have thought that they could have asked somebody for help. And I know that's a naive way of thinking. It's much more complicated than that. Can you shed some light on that for us?
Yeah. So, it was interesting. I was teaching a lesson yesterday to an adult skater who's an ER nurse. And I had taken a little sabbatical from coaching recently, and I noticed a lot of my skaters had taken a little break too, which is fine. So we had our lesson yesterday, and she said, I'm so sorry. I'm kind of rusty. The spin's not good. I'm like, it's okay. You took a break. It'll come back. And she's like, yeah, but it's different when you have your coach, because you want to impress your coach and you want your coach to be proud of you. And, to hear those words come out from an adult woman, who knows that she skates for herself, she skates for fun, but there's always that relationship between an athlete and a coach where you want to make your coach proud. Mm-hmm. So now put that in a competitive situation, especially in a country like Russia, where these athletes in Russia, for example, like if you are not performing at a certain level, they're just going to find another athlete, right? Your career's over. So if you think about how much work that athlete's putting in, what their goals are, what their dreams are, they want to please their coach. They want to maintain the right to represent their country, in international events. So then they do what they're making them do, right? And they don't really have any other options. It's really sad. In the U.S., we have recreational sports and we have competitive elite mm-hmm. sports, at a national, international level. So there's always a way to be involved. And even being at that higher level doesn't mean that you have to abuse your body or abuse yourself psychologically. I think there's a big movement here in the U.S. about how to be a healthy athlete and how to, have that longevity even after the sport. Or I know like in U.S. figure skating, for example, there's this big thing about lifetime on the ice. Mm-hmm. So like as you get older and as your body changes and just circumstances change in your life, there's always a way for you to feel welcomed on the ice. There's always some facet of the sport you can participate in, so you can still be a part of the community. It's not that, you didn't do X, Y, and Z, you didn't make it at nationals, you're done. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just very different, what setting you're talking about, what country you're talking about, what level of sports you're talking about. But I think there's just this inherent need for people to please whoever it is that's coaching them or watching them. And so I think a lot of that confidence you see when somebody performs, it's part of their training. Mm. Like when we go out there, we perform like we try to make it look easy, even though inside we may be nervous or we're having doubts but you can't show it on the outside. So that's just part of the training too. Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's a great reminder to us that whether our kids are on an elite level and whether they're in skating or baseball or even learning how to do magic, mm-hmm. we need to be vigilant and monitor the kind of relationships they have with the adults in their lives and
Yes.
and have that good communication with our kids so that they know that if there's something that happens that makes them feel uncomfortable, they can come to us, whether they're 8, 10, 17, or however old.
I agree.
It's not their fault. That it's that they can ask for help.
Yeah.
So important. This is a crazy question. I apologize, but when I think of hockey, when I think of figure skating, I think of Minnesota, Massachusetts, Washington State. I don't think of Alabama. How did Alabama become a competitive figure skater?
So, it was in the 90s. I think it was around 91, 92, and the Olympics were on, and I just love Kristi Yamaguchi. And we were moving from Ohio to Alabama, and I was not very thrilled about the move. So my dad said, well, there's a new rink that's just been built in Huntsville, and I will sign you up for lessons. And he didn't add the disclaimer, but, maybe you could have a better attitude about this, about moving. And then I went to my first class, and I was just hooked. Interestingly enough, Huntsville has University of Alabama in Huntsville, and they have a very successful collegiate hockey program. In the 90s, they won many national titles, and hockey is huge there. And then the rink in Pelham, where I live, that opened in the late 90s. Funny enough, it's ice skating and hockey is really booming in Nashville and Atlanta. Atlanta has like 5 or 6 rinks. Nashville has 5 or 6 rinks. So I think the winter sports are really starting to take hold here in the South.
Well, that's really wonderful. I mean, my one visit to Alabama was in late August, so I actually had to swim from my car into the college that we're visiting with my daughter.
It's so bad. So humid. And that's you'll find this interesting. So, in the summertime, it does feel nice to go an ice skating rink, right? Because it's like 90, 100 degrees. It's great. But because the humidity is so bad, there's condensation that builds up on the ceiling and it drips onto the ice and it makes these large pimples. I'm talking about they can be like this big. Mm-hmm. So if you don't watch where you're going as a skater and you hit one of those bumps, it is disastrous. Mm. So they have to resurface the ice more often. We have this little shovel thing that will take out there and like chip away at these bumps as they form. Because they're huge. Mm-hmm. And they have dehumidification systems and they try their best, but you just cannot beat the humidity down here. It's just so bad.
Yeah. My niece, I don't know if I told you this the last time we spoke, but my niece fell in love, moved here from Central America and somehow fell in love with hockey and needed somebody to go skating with her. And I hadn't been on the ice for 40 years, but she convinced me and we had a blast, and just a memory popped up on my phone of a picture. There was a day we were on the ice in July, and for some reason, towards the end, the last 10, 15 minutes of the skating session, we were the only ones on the ice, and we played tag on that hockey rink. I don't know how I was flying on the ice, and I'm going, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to hit something. I'm going to die. But I'm having so much fun. I don't care.
That's all, and also when you fall on the ice, it can hurt, but you can slide, and that helps so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, so if there's somebody out there that's like, an adult and they didn't grow up with hockey and they didn't grow up with figure skating and I'm too old to pick this up right now, what would you say to that person?
So you're actually not too old. Both USA Hockey and Learn to Skate USA, they have programs for adults to start hockey and figure skating. And they have adult classes and they're so much fun. We have ours on Monday nights here and people come of all ages and they start you off ice. just getting comfortable with walking and squatting and the skates and everything. And they just walk you through it at your comfort level with a really safe approach. Helmets and gloves are recommended, and you'd be surprised what you can pick up at any age in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I hadn't been on skates for over 40 years, and I got back out on the ice, and I was pretty terrified. I didn't want to wear a helmet, but I wore this big, thick wool cap thinking that would save me. But I had a blast, and it really is a lot of fun. And anybody out there that hasn't been on ice for a long time, hasn't ever been on ice, give it a shot. You're going to have a lot of fun. And for families out there that are looking for a great book to read with your teens and tweens, I think that The Price of Ice would probably be a good choice.
I would agree.
Hey, and Anita, where can people go to find out more about The Price of Ice and also more about you?
Sure. You can check out my website. It's www.anitasaxena.com, or the publisher website, outsideedgebooks.com. I believe The Price of Ice will be releasing December 19th, 2022, and pre-sale should open up in the next few weeks, and you can pick it up at any major retailer, your local independent bookstore, or request it at your local library.
We've been talking with the author of The Price of Ice about this wonderful young adult contemporary romance. We've been talking about skating, about ACL injuries, and about a lot of different stuff with our guest, Anita Saxena. Hey, Anita, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Jessica Vitalis. She'll be here to celebrate The Rabbit's Gift, wonderful middle grade fantasy. Hey, if you are the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love to help you celebrate that book with the world. Being an author can be so difficult. And on top of that, when you sat down to write your children's book, you had no idea that you were actually starting a small business and that you were going to be the CEO of your small children's book business. And that in addition to writing that book, you needed to design it and you needed to market it. Well, you don't need to market it on your own. We would love to help you celebrate and promote your book. There are so many ways that we can help you. You can be a guest here on the podcast. You can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel. And you can also take part in our monthly promotion programs. Learn all about that and more by going to readingwithyourkids.com, clicking on the author's Click Here button at the top of the page, and scrolling on down to the different options. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Anita Saxena. Please be sure to check out The Price of Ice. Also want to thank our sponsors, Carolyn, known as Vasquez. Her beautiful picture book, Ken, will be one of your family favorites. And if you love cooking with your kids, be sure to check out Ancient Eats, an edible journey by Stephanie Hansen. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Jordan Saley, Mirabella Q. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.